I just love the family. I like their relationship. They're all so close, and it's so, there's so much laughter in between the family. They're all very close, and the parents, their love is very, it really touches the story, I feel like, which makes Simon want to fall in love with someone. And I just loved the relationship that he shared with his sister and his mom and his dad. It's about going through puberty, really, and about meeting new friends, and it's about a family and just figuring out like where your place is and just trying to find a way to live, I guess, in a sense, because he goes to school every morning, and you'd think he's just like a normal average kid, but what is that even, like average? Everyone goes through stuff, and it's about digging through all the happiness and the laughter and finding out what resides inside. I think Nora and Simon kind of balance the family because she's very goofy and Simon's kind of fun and serious at the same time. He's like very mature and not crazy outgoing. He's a little awkward. And then Nora's just kind of bubbly and fun, and so they kind of balance it out. And then the parents are kind of the same way. They're just always, the mom is very smart, she's very intelligent, she's a therapist. So she's always kind of talking about like your emotions and everything, and we're always just goofing around while the dad and the mom are like kissing or whatever. A lot of it's fun and it's very lighthearted in some parts, but also it gets to the truth about what going through puberty and becoming a teenager is all about.
I loved the way that they approached being young and still discovering your sexuality and still coming into your own within that. And I loved how they just made it so easy. You know, my character Abby, when they're like, "Oh, did you hear that someone at school is gay?" And she's like, "Who cares?" Because it doesn't matter. And I think that the more and more that we show that in films and the more and more that we show that through art, the more and more we're able to accept people for every walk of life, for every, you know, everything that's different about them. Simon sees a post on Creek Secrets about a guy who's in the closet but who's afraid to come out, and that resonates with him so much because it's not that he's afraid to come out, it's just that he doesn't want to, and there's someone out there who's kind of living in fear, and that fear is very real, and I think it really just resonates with him, and it makes him kind of say, okay, I'm not the only one. It's like a sigh of relief to kind of know that there's somebody else out there that's dealing with the same issues that you are. And I think that he really got a chance to kind of see her origin a little bit and was like, oh, wow, you know, she doesn't have a specific idea of who I am in her mind because we grew up together and they knew me before I liked anything, you know, they knew me when I was eating sand, and Abby doesn't know him when he's eating sand. She knows him as exactly who he wants to be, and he's able to show her that because that's how they came to each other. What I love about this movie is that we say it's okay to live in the gray. It's okay to not know, because as human beings, we are constantly learning. We're all students. There are no teachers on this planet. I mean, even teachers are still learning, and they learn from their students. And so with this movie, I think that we are trying to teach people how to learn and how to be open to learning and how to be open to life and open to different people and different ideas. And I think everyone can take away a little bit of something from that. Abby she's one of the friends, she's one of the kids. I mean, she doesn't think that she's hot in any way, shape, or form, which is kind of why she's so hot, in my opinion, is that she's just chilling and she's 100% authentic to who she is in every situation. I think that a lot of teenagers can relate to the struggle because I think that a lot of teenagers are struggling with themselves. You know, they don't know who they are. They have no idea what they want to necessarily be when they grow up or the type of person that they want to be. Do I want to be my parents? Do I want to be myself? Do I want to be my best friend? Do I want to be my best friend's mom? You know, do I want to be my best friend's dad? I think that a lot of people can relate to this because it's not just about sexuality. It's about who are you?
We are making a movie that would have been like my favorite movie as a teenager. Like, we're making the kind of movie that I grew up on, and that's super cool. I know my readers are going to love this adaptation. It is so spot on, and it just like absolutely captures the heart and essence of the story. And so that makes me really excited. That's one of the things I'm really excited about with Simon, and that I think Simon has the potential to do, is to show a different narrative. Like, I'll show a whole new group of kids that, like, hey, you know, like, your story and kind of the way your experience is playing out, that's normal as well. I am in awe of this cast. Like, it is a stellar cast. It's flawless. And as each person also gets announced publicly, like, my readers are going berserk. Like, it is it's unbelievably cool watching these particular actors bring my characters to life. There's a line that I love that's in the script that I wish I could claim for the book. But, you know, Jennifer Garner as mom tells Simon, it's like, for the last couple of years, it's been like you've been holding your breath. Like, I could feel you holding your breath. And I see that in the way Nick Robinson plays Simon. It's just, you know, even in these moments of joy with his friends, or, you know, he's, you know, there's this part of him that's like holding something, and you just see him grappling with it throughout. It's this undercurrent, like, through the whole movie. It is just like, I mean, it's incredible. Jennifer Garner is really funny. I should have known that about her, but I don't know if I put that together so much. She's hilarious. And as the mom, she's just like, you know, you'd want her to be your mom for sure. Like, she's just fantastic. This dad, he's probably, out of all the characters in this book and movie, that's the only one who I would say is like pretty much mostly based on one person, and it's my dad.
I loved it as a book, and then I loved it even more when Isaac and Elizabeth had written the script. I sort of was sitting around one Saturday, and someone had told me they were making this movie, and I had known about it from the book. And I read the script, and really fell in love with the story right away. It was sort of everything that it reminded me so much of being in high school, of the movies I loved when I was in high school, and it just captured a certain spirit. And I thought, when I put it down, I have to be a part of this. I think one of the things Becky captured in the book that was so special, and I think the writers have sort of done the same thing, and the actors, everybody sort of amplified it along the way, is an authenticity to the voices. I think that's one of the hardest things to sort of capture about young people, is just like, what do they sound like? What do they talk like? How do they refer to each other? And how can it be sort of the moment, but still, you know, timeless in a way? And I think she always had the spirit of that. And I think throughout, I've just tried to keep that spirit alive, and to make the film hopefully just as resonant as the book is in that regard. The love story that Simon has with Blue, I think, is really evocative and emotional for anyone who's ever been in love or fallen in love. I think there's an element about it that's so wonderful, in that it's easier sometimes to reveal ourselves to a total stranger, you know, and to say who we are than it is to someone who's like actively in our life. So you have the whole element of just them introducing themselves to one another, and then you have the anxiety and the fear of if Simon feels like the possibility of losing this person that he's come to, who he doesn't even know, who he's come to sort of be in love with, and if those letters get outed and he loses this person in any way, would his whole life sort of fall apart? And then there's the ultimate reveal of who this person is, and just the driving extra element of the film, of this plot of, is it you? Is it you? You know, are you the one writing me the letters? And I think that was always such a wonderful kind of mystery to the movie. I think sometimes in teen romantic comedies, you know, they kind of go to this place of the parents having to be extra quirky, or characters that kind of like are goofy in some way. I think it was really vital for this film, in both the casting of Josh and Jen, and, you know, obviously that they feel like a real family, and that they feel like this, and also that they feel like this couple that Simon is always measuring his own life against, because he's sitting there at 16 and 17 and feeling like, you know, my parents met in high school. Look at them, they're perfect. They're this like all-American, adorable couple, and it's even that much more pressure, I think, for Simon to feel as though he needs the perfect love story. And he has his own dynamic with each other actor in the film as an actor, as the character really does with each of the characters. And so you'd feel the tone of the set change when he was in a scene with Martin, or you'd feel the tone of the set change again when he's in a scene with Leah, or he's in a scene with his mom and dad. And he kind of just really was Simon in those moments. And it lets the movie feel like it's a slightly different, film, but you're guided so much by that person. You can sort of give them a little bit of guidance, but they're really taking you to those places. I knew the day he was watching it, and I remember how nervous I was. You'd think the studio heads were watching it, because I so wanted him to, let us not just use that song, but possibly be a part of the movie. And when he had the kind of emotional reaction he had to the movie and said that he wanted to be a part, it just felt like a sign to me that the movie we had achieved one of the things we kind of wanted to achieve, which was a chance at having a musical voice that mirrored what the film was. One of the reasons I chose to do the movie was there, and I don't know why, but there just still hasn't been. It's 2018, and there's not, a major studio film about a gay high schooler. And it's, I obviously hope that there'll be dozens more, and they'll cover terrain that we didn't get to cover with this, and they'll be more specific in totally their other ways. But someone at some point had to be first through the door, And I remember being in high school and watching these movies and having to imagine sort of, secondary and tertiary characters that might be gay, and have to do all that work rather than just necessarily enjoy the film, And I think everyone that made the film, from the cast to the production people to the, the studio, to producers, to everyone even in post and subsequently, I think is aware in some capacity that we're putting something there that just wasn't there before. I think hopefully again there'll be many more after it. But yeah, that was definitely a part of wanting to do it. And when I read that script and when I read the book and I got to the end, I found myself crying, and not just because it was sad or whatever, but because I felt Simon's sense of liberation and being himself and getting to not waiting till after to college or till he was 24 or 25, but now realizing that I only have today, and today I'm going to start by just being everything I am. And I think, and that will help me find who I'm supposed to be and help me find people I'm supposed to enjoy life with and fall in love with, and not by pretending to be something I'm not, but by actually being everything I am. I think the most fun for me making the film was the relationships. It was truly a labor of love for a lot of people that chose to be a part of this movie. And, I'll remember it, probably the way you remember parts of high school or things in your life, always fondly. And if you've been in the business long enough, it's rare that something comes along that is both really good, that you're really proud of, but also a great experience. And with people you'll know the rest of your life, or you'll watch, the rest of your life. And this had that in spades. I really hope when people finish the movie that it both reminds them of their own, experience, and reminds them of high school, and reminds them of the friendships that they had then, and the family that they grew up with, and that moment in their life, and that it's the kind of film that they'll want to watch again and again through the years, because that's sort of how they have that particular emotional experience, that it will sit with them and stay with them, and be the kind of movie that they revisit the way that they would a yearbook, an old high school yearbook.
As soon as I talked to Greg about it, and he started discussing just his feelings on it and what it was, and I think he kept going back to this sort of modern John Hughes feeling, which meant a lot to me. And then I saw the film, and it was beautiful. I absolutely loved it. It was it's such a specific it's such a specific thing that I don't think people are doing a lot of nowadays, of which is what I love about John Hughes, and it reminded me of those films that I had growing up. I loved talking with him, and I loved working with him on this, because we both have this shared idea that things that exist in mainstream don't have to ever assume people aren't smart or emotional. And I love that this film does that. It's it feels like it's for everybody, but never at the expense of quality. And those conversations I had early on with Greg are important to me and made me want to work on it. Collaborating with him was great because he is so incredibly specific. I mean, the most uninspiring people to collaborate with, the opposite of Greg, are people who are just like, great, that's perfect. You know, I mean, he's so specific, and he's been living, making the film and editing it forever, and especially just the tone of scenes, or just he had an idea so specifically of what it was. And then I obviously have my feelings on how specific I want things to be, so it was really thrilling when we were able to meet up. The most important thing to me is carrying this weight. Essentially, it's a film about a character who's just carrying this weight everywhere, and it gets heavier because he can't share it. Everyone carries a certain amount of weight, which I think you start to realize. You know, at the beginning of the film, you're very focused on Simon and everything he's going through, and then you start to understand all these other characters and everything that everyone goes through, and that he feels less alone. Everyone's sort of going through a lot. But this idea, which is a place that I write from a lot, and it was very inspiring to me, of dragging all this weight around and trying to, you know, be a human being throughout that. It's challenging. I think it's the story of what we all go through. What I want people to get from it is exactly what it is, which is just that there's just two sides to it. It's extremely emotional, and it's an extremely good time all at once. But I feel like what I would really hope is that people put it on in their car when they're driving home from somewhere. I think it's real leaving a place, dealing with your loneliness type of music. But hope. There's hope there. I mean, what I've been telling people, just my friends and family, is that, like, you're just going to see a part of yourself in it. That's what I did. I think it's just, you know, rare and exciting when it's such a specific story, but in some way really about all of us. That's always been the secret of life, is obviously to be yourself, but when it comes to younger people, it's like, what's influencing them? So if you have all these big influences that are through legislation or even just words trying to get people to not be who they are, not accept who they are, and we need to combat that as best we can with films and music and anything else that reaches a lot of people. I believe in that idea that things that reach a lot of people can have that shift. And so it really matters on that level. I think what people have to look forward to in the film is, in a time where we need this, there's just a lot of heart and soul in there.
There's just such a clear voice to it, and there's such a happy energy to it, and it uses that kind of happy, frothy energy to tackle something that hasn't really been done in this way before. So he's part of this great family, and he has a great group of friends at school, but there's something lonely in him, and it is that he has this secret. He's gay, and he hasn't shared it with the people closest to him. So it's just Simon's journey toward discovering what it means to own something so central to who you are, to the people who love you the most. The truth will set you free, but there is a moment where everyone has to react to the truth. And that is so overwhelming, the fear of that moment, that it keeps people from relaxing into who they can be. And I think that's especially true for, you know, lesbian, gay, queer, transgender kids who are realizing, you know, I eventually I'm going to have to talk to people around me about something that I know to be true about myself. But the pressure of that and the anticipation of it and the imagined explosion that could, you know, that could happen from something like saying that out loud is pretty intense, I would think. The movie it feels like a romantic comedy. You know, it feels like the first romantic comedy that happens to be about two boys. He's just crushing it. He's so good. He breaks your heart, and you just absolutely fall in love with him in the way that you do in the book. Greg and I have known each other forever, and I'm so happy that we're finally getting a chance to work together. He was the perfect choice for this. He's a huge reason that I was so excited to be a part of the film. Greg and I sat down a couple of months ago in LA to first talk about the movie, and I said, you know, here's some thoughts I have about the script, and he went back and wrote these amazing scenes to fill in the blanks that I felt like were kind of glaring for Emily and for the movie in general. And instead of saying, oh, you just want more to do or you just want a big juicy scene, he just said, I actually really see the need for that, and was so collaborative and so fantastic. And he's one of those directors who seems completely, you can't mess with his zen. He's a master of zen. And he's got it all under control. This is very personal for him, but he's not precious about it.
Everybody has to just be themselves, because if not, then that's a shame, because the world will be missing out on another person. Don't be a clone. Don't conform to what people want you to be. Just be you and let people accept you. And the thing is, if they don't, those aren't the people you want around you. I play Nick Eisner, and Nick is Simon's best friend for like the last 13, 14 years. And you know, I'm this good guy who I'm accepting of everything. I'm playing soccer, and I'm a straight shooter who's just like, you're cool, I like you, we're cool, let's have fun. That I don't have like a secret agenda or a secret that I'm trying to hide throughout the whole movie. I just, as soon as I like Abby, I tell Nick, Simon, who's played by Nick Robinson, I tell him, I like her, I'm gonna go ask her out. Like I call it as I see it, and yeah, I'm just that guy. You know, it's always weird when you fly, when you leave your home and you're best friends with these 5 people for the next 2 months, and then obviously we could act like we're best friends, and then, you know, it's our job, but with Nick and the rest of the cast, it's much easier because we're actually good friends and we hang out all the time. And so I guess what he brings is like an actual authenticity to our relationship into the movie, because it was, you know, we were able to form that so well. Right now, it's actually hard for people with that same secret to relate, because they don't have the role models, and everything is not as welcoming as it should be for everybody. So, which is why I think they'll relate with Simon so much, because they'll get to see themselves a reflection of what they're going through.
The movie's really about acceptance and tolerance and love, and it's funny. I really liked that it was funny. It wasn't too heavy-handed. It's about a high school kid who's gay, and is terrified about coming out because of what it'll do to his family and how it'll affect all his friends at school. And ultimately, that could be a really sort of heavy-handed movie, but it's a funny sort of light take on it, which I thought was refreshing. He's that dad that's always sort of takes the joke one step too far, you know. I can really relate to that because I've been known to do that myself, where, you know, it just sort of goes past the line on things that, you know, are to him funny, but, you know, other people, they might be offensive. He means no harm, but I found that to be really awkward and added a lot of sort of tension to the family dynamic, which was fun because, you know, there's no ill will. He's just a little awkward. That's really what I loved about it and what I wanted to do. This guy has no idea. He has no idea that his son is gay. In fact, he's always making like little jokes about women and, oh, that guy's obviously gay, and, you know, and so when he finds out his own son is gay, he's, you know, totally ashamed that he, you know, said some of the things he did, but also found, you know, that it doesn't really matter, you know, and you're still my kid, and I love you no matter what, and I wouldn't change anything about you. You know, I remember going through high school, and it was a struggle. This was some of my least favorite years because I was so awkward, and because, you know, you're dealing with the hormones, and you're dealing with the cliques, and you're trying to, you know, you're in that transition between child and adult, and it's just an awkward phase for everybody. So I think what makes this a relatable and universal story is that he's going through what everybody else is going through, except that he happens to be gay. When you have a director that sets a tone like Greg does, it just makes the whole experience that much better. It really does. And Greg is about as solid of a dude as you can imagine. Social media can be a vessel of positivity, but it can also be, you know, a place for trolls to say really mean things. And so, you know, I just think it adds another layer of pressure. How many people like me? Who's following me? You know, and that becomes how a lot of us value ourselves, you know, by how many people like us on Instagram, or how, you know, good my selfie looks. You know, there's a lot of that going on.
You know, I read the book Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli, and like, I loved it. I fell in love with it, and it felt so truthful yet so lighthearted, but dealt with serious issues in a way that was relatable. And you know, I think even more so after reading it, I was like, okay, we've got to make this, and we've got to do it well. And I was so psyched to be able to be a part of it and to be Leah. I think it's such an endearing story, but it's also done so in a way where it feels truthful and real. And it actually kind of made me think about my own high school experiences. And you know, personally, I'm actually such a huge fan of the book. I actually, after reading it, I Instagrammed Becky Albertalli and totally like fangirled and was just like, I love your book, I'm in your movie, I'm sorry, I'll leave now. But I think the reason maybe why I loved it so much is, you know, a lot of the reasons why I like it, also maybe some of the reasons why a lot of other people like it, whereas it just feels like it respects the intellect of its audience. It doesn't feel like cheesy or unrealistic, and it's just a really beautiful story about love. We don't see like gay teenage characters. We don't see those coming of age stories of people who are bi or people who are pansexual or transgender. They're not represented in our media, and therefore we don't know a lot about it, and therefore it feels weird to be that. And I think it takes a lot of strength and a lot of courage to come out. And I hope that this film can kind of help normalize the fact that being gay is normal and fine and not weird and natural. And yeah, I play Leah Burke, so I play Simon's best friend. And Leah's very, I want to say, interesting. She and Simon have known each other for 13 years. You know, they've been best friends for, you know, since they were in kindergarten. And I think Leah, I feel like Leah, she comes off as a little bit snarky and witty and has quite a hard shell, but on the inside, she's very insecure and quite fragile. And I think what Leah struggles with is all of these people growing up around her, particularly, you know, when we see Abby come into the equation. She's comfortable with Nick and Simon because she's known them for so long, but when Abby comes in, Abby is so much more into that world of like parties and growing up and doing things, and I think that makes Leah even more uncomfortable, which probably brings out an even more viperish kind of vibe in her. He's so intelligent and wise, and I think he's really taking kind of he's taking such a heartfelt approach to this, which I think is so important. Yeah, and he's working so closely with Greg, and he's such a wonderful actor to work with as well, because he's so generous and he really listens, which I find so admirable in an actor. And he knows what he wants in a scene. And yeah, I've enjoyed immensely working with him because it's just so fun. But you have such a great time as an actor working with him because you just feel like you get such great work done. It does have that potential to inspire people to kind of be true to themselves. And it does highlight the importance, I feel, of integrity and of courage and bravery. I think being courageous and being brave is very important, not just for yourself and everyday life, but, you know, particularly now, it's so important to be informed and be aware and to be assertive. And it's also important, I feel, when you're with a group of people, because we need to look out for each other. You know, it sounds cliche, but like, you know, all the voices kind of, it makes a difference. You know, if one person stands up and says something, a lot of other people will probably follow, but it just takes that one person to stand up for the rest to follow. I feel like it's something that we haven't seen before necessarily on mainstream films, and it's also going to bring a lot of joy, a lot of love, and I feel a little bit of a lesson.
The thing that most excited me about the film, about being a part of this film, is obviously the subject matter, and I think its importance and relevance to society right now, and I think what a lot of people need to see on their screens and what a lot of kids need to see on their screens, and it's something that I think this is like the first step to making a story like this normal. It's very rare to see a big movie like this with, you know, a male love interest for a leading man character. I think that that's really rare, and to also see them in a high school setting, you know, these two young guys growing up and dealing with this, you know, in a really sensitive, beautiful, but also like very realistic way, I think is super cool, and it's surprising that it's unique, but it is. I think like these characters mean a lot to so many people, so it's nice to be able to connect with another actor, and you know, from day one, I've sort of been in and out of shooting, and so it's been nice to have been made feel so welcome straight away. It's awesome to have Katherine here because I get to sort of hang out with another Australian on set, which is, you know, not always the case. And so if there are certain words or terms that like all the other casts are talking about, or jokes or whatever, and we both sort of look at each other and we have no idea what they're going on about, it's sort of refreshing to have a companion there that gets you a bit in that sense, so I don't feel so silly. It's so cool. He's treating this film with such sensitivity, and he has so much passion for it, and you can feel that, and you can feel that on the set, and I think he's created such a beautiful energy that it allows everyone to feel really safe and to feel confident in this project. It's just, I can't imagine working with another director for this movie. I think people are very uncomfortable with being themselves. Like, I know that for sure, and I think that's like a daily struggle for a lot of people, if not everyone, at some point in their lives, you know, especially as a teenager when you're in high school and you know, you're absorbing so many different personalities, and everyone has different backgrounds, and so I think why it's important to have that message, and why it's important for people to be able to see that now, is because we're in an age where being uncomfortable can cause, it can have a snowball effect, and it can build to tension, lies, conflict, pain, and even abuse, you know? I think so. Just being comfortable and confident within yourself can often mean that you're not going to feel the need to lash out at someone else, or you're not going to feel the need to lie to this person and cover up this and pretend to be something you're not. And as you get older, if you haven't dealt with those issues as a teenager and as a young adult, I think they just get worse. It always sounds cheesy to be yourself. But I know that for sure when I was in high school, it didn't matter what it was. I was constantly sort of like a chameleon, and I think you have to be at some point, but there comes a time where you need to grow out of that and figure out, you know, who you are. So I think I would just tell myself to be content with who you are, and to know that you're going to grow and you're going to change, you're going to make decisions, and but that there's, you know, who you are is great, and to not doubt that, and yeah, to just enjoy yourself. Also, high school doesn't last forever.
You know, it discusses a topic of acceptance, you know, specifically in the LGBTQ community, but also all around. You know, it's a message that people need to hear right now, I think. The film has its serious element to it, but can also have fun with itself, not take itself too seriously. And I think that, you know, audience will resonate to that. and it's got a good message, but it's fun, funny, and you know, it's got wonderful people like Logan Miller and Nick Robinson in it. So that's what makes it all different. We all kind of live in a world where we want to try to be our truest selves, but sometimes there are things that get in the way of that. And this movie depicts people that are trying to be themselves and working through that. So, you know, I think that it's a very humanistic story that, you know, everybody can kind of relate to. We all have our secrets, or we all have something that we're going through, you know. It might not be as extensive as, you know, trying to come out for the first time, but it could also be just other things. You know, you could have had family issues, you could have social issues. You know, all of these things are relative to Simon's story, and I think that everybody can kind of take away a little chapter out of his book with this. I think it's important to be true to yourself because, you know, you'll never be happy if you are living in some sort of lie or trying to be something that you're not, you know? And I think, yeah, true happiness is with accepting everyone and, you know, feeling accepted as well. And so, you know, our film definitely touches on all of that. And, you know, hopefully it can bring people together.
First, I read the script and I thought it was so great. Not only like does it convey a really nice message, but also it's really funny and smart and quick. And also, just as a fan of the book, I was really excited to be a part of this movie. And again, I think it shows such an important message, especially right now. And I think it could be really helpful to a lot of kids growing up dealing with the same things as Simon and not knowing how to approach it. So I think it's important. I think it's refreshing because they don't really treat the kids the way a lot of people do in high school stories. You know, they're smart and interesting and witty and are dealing with real issues that a lot of times TV shows and movies don't really portray. And I think it makes it really different from anything else. It is about a boy who ends up kind of in an emailing relationship with a boy that goes to his school, but he doesn't know who it is. And both Simon and the other character who goes by Blue over the emails don't want to reveal their identities because they're scared about people's reactions. And it's kind of about Simon coming to terms with that and figuring out how to handle it, and ultimately being in love and how that can kind of change your entire life. I think a lot of young people are going through the same thing that Simon is going through, not necessarily with the whole, you know, internet relationship, but just struggling with their sexuality and how to talk to their friends and family about it, and fears about how people might react to it. And I think that probably resonated with a lot of people. And you can also carry that into so many different things, not just about sexuality, just anything that you're going through in your life that you feel like you can't talk to people about. And so I think a lot of people probably related to that. Well, ultimately it causes him to have to face this thing he's been so scared of for such a long time, and kind of thrusts him into it maybe too soon, but he ultimately prevails in being able to handle that, which I think is a good message for young people, that you can overcome things even if they seem scary and hard. Anyone can kind of put themselves in Simon's shoes, whether it be about the same thing he's going through or something else, because yeah, at that age, a lot of people don't know who they are or are figuring out who they are and are scared to share that with people. And that's ultimately what the story's about. I think it's a really funny movie, despite it having a serious message, and I think it'll allow them to see this story and gain a perspective on people that aren't represented in film a lot, and I think that that's really important.
What excited me about the project is the fact that this story has not been told before in this setting, in high school, in a sort of coming-of-age film. And I feel like it was past due, and I wanted to be part of the team that helped tell it. He's, you know, he's just trying to find himself in the world of high school, which is hard enough as it is, and then he has to, all of this is compounded by the fact that he's struggling with his sexuality, and that's, I think also where a lot of the comedy comes from, because he has, he's able to kind of turn situations that might seem bleak to some and find the humor in it, which is something that I find to be very appealing. It's significant to Simon because it represents just a peer, a colleague, someone who's going through the same thing. And not only are they going through the same thing, but they're going to the same school. So it's just this big mystery to him of who is this person. And he spends the rest of the movie trying to figure that out. He reaches out to Blue, just hoping that he might respond and be open to some kind of discussion, and he is, and they do. And he has a very lengthy correspondence with this person that he doesn't know, and he ends up falling in love. So it starts from just sort of a curiosity to something that is very essential to his life. You know, if you take something and kind of put a spin of humor onto it, I think people respond to that. It's just, you know, I think it's truer to life as well. I mean, not everything's always doom and gloom, and if you can't laugh about something, then I think you must be doing something wrong. Greg, I talked to Greg like, I don't know, maybe 6 months before we started this thing, and he's been awesome this whole time, and I couldn't imagine somebody better to actually tell this story.
He's a really awkward vice principal who's just trying to be one of the kids, and he should just stop. He should just stop talking. He's trying to be cool. He's trying to have the latest phone and the latest, you know, sneakers and all this kind of stuff. But he's got a good heart. He really cares for the students. He loves the school. He adores the school. And he doesn't understand why kids are on their phones so much. He wants them to embrace, you know, life experience. But he'll talk about, you know, he just has no boundaries. He talks about his Tinder dates with Simon. It's like, come on, dude, get some boundaries. But yeah, so Simon responds to him the same way all the other kids. It's just like, Mr. Worth, shut up, shut your face. Like a lot of stories, it shows the underdog, and it gives the underdog his due. And there's a lot of kids out there who don't feel seen. You know, they're going through tough times. They don't feel like they can talk about it. And I mean, I personally was a kid who was raised in the South, who I wasn't into sports, but I was like a theater kid. And so it wasn't very common for me to be in theater, you know? And it's like, but then I found this theater group that I really loved, and they embraced it. I embraced it, they embraced me, and it was just so refreshing. But a lot of kids don't have that outlet, you know, and so I think they can resonate with a character that's being seen, and then have the hope that maybe I'll be seen by someone one day. It's about any kid's story who just doesn't feel like they're allowed to tell their own story, and who's forgotten, and feels isolated, and can't be honest about stuff. And I think that's just, I mean, anytime that can be shown and told and encourage people, I think that's a good thing. One thing I love about movies, and something like this movie, is it zeroes in on one person's story. And it's a story that a large community in the world might not even consider, you know? And so just bringing awareness to that story, and then another film zeroes into somebody else's story. You know, so it just broadens your perspective of the hundreds of thousands of stories that are out there, and the world is not just in your little bubble. You know, and I think that's a really important thing. I love how Greg just uses humor and quirkiness and musical numbers, and, you know, just blows it out and just makes it fun. And it's like, if it's a heavy topic, but let's make it fun and show it in a way that hasn't been seen. Every single person on this set, all I've heard is how wonderful he is, how much of a team player he is, how encouraging he is. And it shows that you can captain your ship and still be kind, and you can still be a positive force, and you can make, because the fact is, my character's kind of in and out, but most of these people have been here for 2 months, and it's like, if you're gonna be together for 2 months, make it a good experience. And Greg sees the value of that. He makes it a community, family experience, and I just think that's the stuff that matters, and I have a huge appreciation for that, in addition to him just being a great director. Simon is played by the fantastic Nick Robinson, who's just a really cool kid. He really is. This is the first time I've met him and worked with him, and he's just a good guy. We just, most of my scenes are with him, so it's just fun just to kind of pal around, and because every now and then sometimes you'll meet other actors who maybe are kind of hip and trendy and stuff, and you never know what you're gonna get. Maybe you'll get like an entitled kid, like a child star that's just like, I got this, and you're just like, all right, enough. And then you get someone like Nick, who's just a normal, kind, talented kid, and he's just doing the best job he can, and I always appreciate that.